Next, we have one of my longtime colleagues, Tony Schuman, who has been here longer than I have, and he's played a critical role in the development of the school. So I look forward to what he has to say. Tony Schuman.
So greetings from Newark. For the past 12 years or so, the focus of most of my work has been on the city of Newark. Certainly not a situation that I imagined when I started architecture school or even when I started teaching. So I want to talk to you tonight a little bit about how that came about, what I'm doing there, and those are really the two threads that I want to go over. Those of you who are graduating this year will hear the dean speak these words at a very nice graduation ceremony in which he will tell you that now that you're launched forth from school, you're going to start the most important design project of your life. Well, that's an interesting thing to me. What is that project design in your life? Ray Lifshay was my first year architecture design critic, and Ray says you design what you are. So that notion that you design your life is not some abstract thing that you know, out of all the options. It really does have to do with something, a variety of forces. So the first think piece talk was given here last year by Jose Alcala. Jose said, "Everything I know I learned in the hardware store." And he gave a really memorable talk. And at the end of that talk, I was moved to send him a copy of this book, Tony the Bricklayer. And Tony the Bricklayer involves a couple of the themes that interest me. This is a guy who was a mason, who was an artist, obviously of a kind of undisciplined school, a political thinker, and he found a way to combine his craft, his art, and his politics. And it seems to me that one of the things that we all try to do in our lives is combine in our work as well as our daily lives those things that are important to us. So for me, a lot of that, where a lot of that started was while I was in architecture school. I was at Columbia School of Architecture from 1966 to 1970. It was the period of the Vietnam War. It was the period of the Civil Rights Movement. I was part of the occupation of Avery Hall, the architecture school, in the spring of 1968. So for me, my architectural education overlapped with a coming of age politically, or a coming to some level of political consciousness. I was part in the late 60s, early 70s, for a year, of a group called the Architects' Resistance, whose goal was to raise political questions within the architectural profession. And one of our most memorable activities was a picket of Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, who were building what was then the largest reinforced concrete building in the world in Johannesburg, South Africa. And we took the position that designing for South African corporate interests who were behind the apartheid system was a racist activity. Tonight's talk is not about our demonstration in front of Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. The subtitle of this, for those of you who remember, is When I Never Met Fred Travisano, because Fred was working at Skidmore at the time of this demonstration. Last summer, I organized a reunion of the 10 core people from the Architects' Resistance. Most of these are not familiar to you. The man on the left is Robert Goodman, author of After the Planners. For Peter Popp, you may recognize Tom Carey, next to him Henry Stone, and two over from me, Julie Stone, whose father was Georgie Kepish, so some of you may know her. What was interesting about this reunion is that all of us, 10 of us, the subtitle is The Class of '68 is 68. That's about how old we all are. The 10 of us, all of us still very much attached to that period of activism in the late 60s. All of us still believing in a lot of the values that we held then, but most of us following somewhat different paths. Why did we follow different paths? Well, it turned out that Richard Rinsler, or now Curry Rinsler, to my left, your right, builds solar houses in Woodstock. Topper Carew on the right is a media consultant at the Media Lab at MIT. Julie Kepish Stone does community landscaping. So we all have these. Henry Stone had a construction firm called Radical Sheetrock. A couple of us are teachers. One is a banker financing moderate income housing rehab. We all took different paths. What determined those paths? Well, it turns out that we have different skills, different aptitudes, different interests, and we try to combine those things as best we can. So there was a turning point in my life, and that was in 1996 when I moved to New Jersey. For me, this is the avatar of all that is great about New Jersey. It's the beefsteak tomato. So the other thing is, when I moved to New Jersey, I bought a car. I bought a Subaru because I thought it was an anagram of suburb, which was close. But what this enabled me to do was to get around Newark in a different way. In the whole history of the school, there have been maybe 5 people on the faculty who've lived in Newark. Troy West, who is certainly the one with the greatest claim to that. Matt Gosser lives there now. Jay Shin, a new faculty member, lives there now. The dean was there 3 nights a week. But most of us don't live in Newark. So for me to get involved there and get around the car was instrumental. So one of the themes that I want to develop now as I start to talk about my involvement in Newark is how Newark interacts with my values on the one hand, but also with my teaching. So the person that really got me involved in Newark directly was not Troy, although I'm very respectful of all the work he did, but a student named Matthew Smith, who's the tall guy in the photo at the right, who was graduated here, I think, from the B-Arc and maybe the MIP program as well, who came to Newark because he was a political disciple of Amiri Baraka. That's a whole other discussion. But Matthew knew about this project to redevelop an area in Newark called Lincoln Park. And there was a design charrette, the article up at the right, in 1999 at Symphony Hall. That's the old great concert hall in Newark. Put together by activists in Lincoln Park involving architects and artists and community residents and bureaucrats. And out of that came an effort to come forth with a plan to redevelop Lincoln Park as an arts district. I got involved with that. The slide on the lower right is a carriage house off Lincoln Park, home of Integrity House. It's a substance abuse treatment program. That's where we met pretty much once a month for about 3 years before Lincoln Park got incorporated as a 501c3. I was involved with that as a teacher. In the newspaper article, the bottom are some student projects, and on the left, the Newark Jazz Map was something put together to get my students in a graduate studio into the spirit of things, so that we mapped every jazz club in Newark from the mid-20th century. There are over 100 clubs here, and the frieze around the edge is photographs taken from Barbara Kukla's book, Swing City. So that was where the students got involved. The article on the left is from 2 weeks ago in the Star Ledger, Newark, a Work of Art. You recognize, of course, Mick Jagger and Bruce Springsteen, Howard Stern because of the America's Got Talent show last summer. But if you could read the text down there, it's all about what? It's all about the Lincoln Park Jazz Festival, which is put together by Anthony Smith, slide on the right, he's on the left, Baye Adolfo Wilson, who's the head of the Lincoln Park Group, that of course is the mayor in the middle, draws 40,000 people to Lincoln Park in the summer. What does all this mean? Well, it means there's a good time, there's good music in Newark. Long term, it's part of an effort to rebuild Newark as an arts center, both for branding, for identity, and also for economic development. These are other images of Lincoln Park. The church that you saw in an earlier photograph will have a performance space. There's an urban farm activity. There's housing that's been built. My second involvement with Newark. Because of the Lincoln Park stuff, I was asked to join the board of the Newark Preservation and Landmarks Committee, which is the nonprofit that does the applications for historic status primarily for buildings in some neighborhoods. My interest, I'm respectful of that, my interest is more a broader social and cultural history of Newark, and I was able to combine that with my love of baseball. And I organized a 4-day celebration in 2007 of the Newark Eagles. Newark Eagles was the championship baseball team in the Negro Leagues from 1946. The owner of the Eagles, a woman named Effa Manley, is the only woman in the Baseball Hall of Fame. We put plaques up at where the former stadium was. There were streets that were named in a housing authority district. That's me and my father's baseball glove. The glove is from 1925. It's a little older than I am. But the big project that's been going on now is the first ever physical model of the entire city of Newark, New Jersey. This is what it looks like. The woman you see there is Jay Shin. Is Jay in the audience tonight? I'm not sure. Jay is now teaching the 3rd year here. But this is a project that was started by me and Damon Rich, the urban designer for the city. We brought in Jay and Brent Klokas to help us with that. What's the purpose of this? Well, I don't have time to go into detail how we made it. I describe it as where GIS meets folk art. There were digital models that were done mostly by Brent Klokas, working off of outdated GIS maps from the city, updated with Google aerial photography. We went through a series of iterations to figure out how to build the base. The large chunks of plywood were milled on the CNC machine, sanded by hand. That's Jay and Brent in that picture there. We had a series of charrettes, one in Easter a year ago over in the parking deck, where the entire base was painted. It was painted by using full-scale plots with transfer paper painted by hand. The main body of work was done by 52 of our students and 82 Newark residents, contributing over 2,000 hours of voluntary labor. The houses were done with pieces of polystyrene, glued, chopped in the chopper that you see in the upper right. The profile buildings were done with the laser cutter, stacked and painted and glued. We had a series of workshops at St. Benedict's Prep, upper right. Stephanie Greenwood, the environmental officer for the city, upper right. Jay's students from Princeton, lower right, and Dave Robinson, Maddie Ruiz, Ada Caro in Troy West building on the lower left. Our students, Belen, Esty, Mina Troy, Kevin Miranda showing his mom the project, wrestling it around into position. It exists in a series of pieces. Here's the triumphal moment. And this is a picture of the model. The model's on the 4th floor of this building, and anyone who would like to see it, I'll be happy to take you there after Darius speaks. What's the overall impact of this? The purpose of the model is to help people who live in Newark understand Newark. The purpose of understanding Newark is to play an active role in its further development. Thank you.